Hey everybody, it's Leeroy from Leeroy Gaming with another Outriders build for you here today. And today's focus is going to be on my Devastator Endless Mass 1-Pump Chump build. Now this was a bit of a meme idea that I had during a stream. Somebody had asked me if I could make a build around a mod that didn't require you to use Fortress or Moaning Winds, but also not really rely on using Anomaly power or firepower. And I kind of took on the challenge and said, let me see what I could do. And after experimenting, I came up with this build. Now this build is extremely fun. It is actually quite viable in solo and in group play, especially if you're playing coordinated play with other people that have AoE attacks. You can just really mop up the floor of a lot of different maps very, very quickly. So this is a unique build like just about nothing else out there. Now, this build involves you basically bringing enemies together with Endless Mass and then utilizing Scrap Grenade with an auto reload, or a manual reload rather, after every shot, utilizing fast fire rifles for basically maximizing your DPS and AoE DPS. And then we also swap between two different rifles so that you have more of an extra AoE focus, or when you're fighting just one boss, you can optimize single target focus as well, and that will be covered within the build. Also, currently as of the recording of this in early October, there is a bug that's been kind of confirmed and almost kind of sanctioned by the developers that I will be mentioning when we talk about the weapons and mods that can make this even more powerful, but it is a temporary buff. And it's not something that this build relies on, so I will be talking about that. So again, if you're looking for a build that's gonna do a good amount of damage, quick clear speed, really, really tanky, but doesn't require you to stack Anomaly power or firepower, believe it or not, well, this build may be for you. As with all of my builds, make sure to check out my timestamps below to go to the sections that you're the most interested in. And as always, if you appreciate my Outriders content and want to see more of it, make sure to like, subscribe, smash that notification bell, and most importantly, leave a comment. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you would like to see me cover in the future. Alright guys, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at my Devastator Endless Mass 1-Pump Chump build. Alright, as always, we're going to start by looking at the skills, and the main skills we're going to be using are going to be Endless Mass and Golem. Endless Mass is going to be used to gather up enemies, apply some debuffs to the enemies as well, and then Golem is going to be there to help us survive. We're going to have this up a lot. It's going to be up constantly, in fact, and on top of that, it's going to help us spread bleed amongst the enemies, which is going to be a big factor when it comes to maximizing our DPS against enemies. Your Impale is kind of an incidental ability. Sometimes you can use it to finish off enemies, to give yourself an armor and health regeneration buff, but more often than not, this is kind of a secondary factor. Now, let's take a look at the actual skill line and skill nodes. We're going to be going down a Seismic Shifter line. And so big things here are going to be getting our protection cooldown decreased. Now, unfortunately, we can't get to the second node the way we're built out, but at least we want to pick this up here. Getting a little bit of life leech, but it doesn't really matter. This is just going to be some incidental healing. You could take Endless Tremor as well, but because you're not going to be using your Impale on cooldown or anywhere close to it, it does not matter. In fact, we don't really even care that much about the Anomaly power nodes either, because we don't really need that much Anomaly power or firepower here. Stone Circle is nice only because whenever we kill enemies within close range, we just get extra healing. So this is going to make it 14 meters instead of 10, so that's a nice boost here. We don't mind increasing the bleed duration. This is actually good because anytime anything is bleeding, they're going to take extra damage from us. So that's actually very, very useful. Also, Executioner is very good because this just straight up increases all damage taken for enemies below 30% health, and that's very, very good. Again, more duration on bleed increase is great here. We're going to get some healing from the bleeding. So again, a little extra healing over time effect, as well as right here, that 25% heal from bleed. The protected by Anomaly is again great. It's going to help us with survival. Now, we're not going to have huge Anomaly, but we're going to definitely have some. We're not stacking it utilizing numerous mods or anything, but this will still help get our baseline armor nice and high. And then Skilled Sentry, again, straight up armor buff and resistance buff, helping with survival. The resistance piercing is okay. There's nothing better that I wanted to use this for. And then finally, Bleed Afflicted enemies, or the Bleed Afflicted on enemies deals 30% damage. That's again useful because there's nothing else that I would rather want here really. And no need to go to the capstone because again, we're not really relying on any of the seismic abilities for damage. So you could technically build this out differently, but the factor that we can get some healing for bleeding, we can get some nice resistances, we can again get Executioner and the extra armor. This ended up being the best pathway that I found for this particular build. And this brings us to our armor and weapons. Now, I'm going to start by talking about weapons. So, one of my goals with this build was to go away from the kind of holy trinity of using weapons with Fortress on them or Moaning Winds. And I wanted to see if it was viable to actually have a weapon rotation. So this build is all about these two weapons here. Heir to the Desert as the primary, and then we're going to be using the Daimyo as the secondary. Now the thing that they both have in common is that they have 1.1 second reload. That is huge. Those are the fastest baseline reloads in the game. Also, there are different types of weapons as well for ammo consideration, even though you should never run out of ammo. And the big thing here is that they both have mods that are baseline that do decent either single target or AoE damage. So Sandstorm, especially when you have enemies grouped up, does quite significant damage. The downside is it's got a 5-second cooldown. And then the Daimyo has a 1-second cooldown. The downside to this is that it's only single target. Now in both cases, we're going to put Scrap Grenade on them. And the idea here is that we're going to be shooting a bullet and then manually reloading. And because there's a 1-second cooldown on the Scrap Grenade and a 1.1 second reload, we're basically trying to minimize the time between shots, reloads, and being able to proc Scrap Grenades every time we shoot a bullet or just about, and keep that as close of a timeline as possible. Any other weapon in a game can be dramatically slower in this process, anywhere from 1.5 seconds, maybe 2.5 seconds, and at that point this becomes unviable. So these are the guns you need. You can start this with just one of these, but optimally you want both, and if you only could pick one, then you would want Heir to the Desert. Now I wanted to show you really quick what this kind of looks like, and this is without any bugs or anything. So the first time you shoot, you see the grenade go off, and then if you reload, it goes straight to it. In fact, you can just shoot and then tap R, and it's going to automatically do this for you. And as you can see, this is pretty fast. If you switch to the Daimyo, it does a very similar effect, but obviously if you are shooting a direct target, it's going to do the lightning attack as the secondary. Now, if you're watching this build video anytime in October or probably November of 2021, then you are probably playing this while there is still a bug that came with the last patch. Now, I'm comfortable talking about this bug because it was actually mentioned by the developers on a recent news update, and they confirmed this bug and basically said, hey, have fun with it. It's going to get patched, but enjoy it. And what the bug basically is a bug that happens when you put the Scrap Grenade mod on any shotgun. And in particular, the best shotgun to put it on would be a Death Shield. Again, something we're trying to avoid, but I am going to show you this because for now you can have some fun with it. And what it basically does is it now procs the Scrap Grenade with basically every single shot, assuming kind of there's still like an internal cooldown of the animation. So let me show you what happens. It's not supposed to work like this, but it does. So if you have the shotgun, you can basically just shoot. Look at that. one. As soon as one lands, it shoots another one. So it's very, very, very potent. And so if you want to have fun and you don't want to have to auto reload, you can basically do this setup with this build and it's going to do a massive amount of damage. Again, it's going to get fixed, but right now I would feel bad not to share this with you because it's out there, and again, it hasn't kind of been blacklisted by the developers. So all you have to do again is do any shotgun. Death Shield is the best because it has Fortress, and Fortress will buff the scrap grenade damage. And then just put the scrap grenade mod on it, and it will again gonna work in a way where it will shoot with every bullet theoretically, not just when you reload. Now you put it on any other type of gun, it works as intended. So I am not doing this run using the Death Shield, even though it could be faster. And I'm not gonna mention the Death Shield again in the setup, but I wanted to mention it. Now we will go back to the setup as intended, and after the change to the game at some point in late November, the Death Shield setup won't work. So you'll still be able to do the setup, but you're going to have it to do it naturally. So those are the only weapons that matter. Now let's go ahead and take a look at armor. Alright, so with the armor, we're going to start with a 3-piece set of the Seismic Commander setup. And this is actually mandatory because what we care about is that increased damage towards enemies with bleed by 50%. So one of the things to note is with mods like the Scrap Grenade mod, they don't get directly impacted or modified by any firepower or anomaly power. What they are modified by is if an enemy is taking additional damage for specific reasons. So for example, if you make an enemy bleed and they take an additional 50% damage, they'll take 50% more damage from Scrap Grenade. So that's kind of the idea here. Now this comes with Ultimate Impaler, which is fine. As I mentioned in the skills section, we're not really going to be casting Impale very often. It's more like if you have a couple enemies that are almost finished off and you want a little regen and health buff, you can go ahead and cast Impale. What we care about here is Golem. So when the skill is active, it extends the duration by 2 seconds for each enemy killed. This is going to help you have your Golem ability stay up for a very, very long time. It's not unusual to have it last 30, sometimes 40 seconds, sometimes longer. Now, if you're playing solo, this is way easier to maintain. If you're playing co-op with multiple players, this is going to be harder to maintain, but you're going to have help killing stuff, so it kind of balances itself out. But this is a critical mod for the setup. For the Seismic Commander armor, it comes with Impale or Palisade buff for Impale again, so it can distract 2 additional targets. This is a pure bonus, as I mentioned before, just to help you clean up some enemies and give you that regeneration and armor buff, but it's completely optional. What we care about is Perseverance, and this is going to make your Golem last twice as long baseline. So baseline, it's 8 seconds. It's going to now last 16 seconds, and then remember, every time you kill something, it's going to increase to another 2 seconds. This is what's going to give you that safety window that makes sure that your Golem buff is up as long as you can while you're killing or trying to kill your initial set of mobs. Now for the legs, we're going Seismic Commander legs. Main thing here, it comes with Tainted Blood, so increases the damage dealt to enemies afflicted with bleed by 25%. Plus that's set bonus, that's already an extra 50%, so that's 75%. And then we have Bleeding Impulse, another key part to this build. So when the Golem is active, you spawn radial impulses that inflict bleed on enemies within a 10-meter radius every 2 seconds. So even the baseline 16 seconds is going to proc 8 times, and it's going to proc more as you kill things. So this is how you're going to get bleed on enemies. So then they're going to take all that extra damage because they are bleeding, and the mods you have from the set bonus and Tainted Blood. And there's going to be one more mod coming up that will also increase bleed damage. So this is, again, another mandatory part of the setup. Now for the gauntlets, I chose Gauntlets of Cannonball. And this is because this comes with Captain Hunter. And this is another one of the mods that increases damage baseline by 25% against elites. And it doesn't matter by what source. So since the only things that are going to take any effort to kill are elites, this is critical. Now you will notice that across these armor pieces, I haven't really cared whether they have bonus firepower or anomaly power. Now, cooldown reduction is the only stat we care about because we do want endless mass to proc up more often than not. So you'll notice this has that, so that's nice. Skill life leech is cool, but not necessary. And the other pieces, you notice that they had cooldown reduction, except for the helmet, and we can't control that. But these gloves are quite good because of the fact that it has a Captain Hunter, and then you can easily put Mosh Pit on there, which is endless mass, inflict vulnerable on all enemies pulled by the skill. And you're going to be pulling a lot of enemies together. And again, vulnerable increases all damage taken by 15%. This is yet another modification or debuff that impacts how much damage you do with the Scrap Grenade mod. Also Sandstorm, also Ultimate Storm Whip. So all these mods that are primary source of your damage will be impacted by this as well. Now do note, if you want to take the effort, you could technically roll an epic piece of gloves that has Mosh Pit on it and then put Captain Hunter on it that way if you want. If you wanted a slightly different statistical setup, but it's honestly unnecessary. And gauntlets of Cannonball are so common that you probably have some lying around. So those are the gloves. And then the boots are the only ones you really need to roll. And so, again, when it comes to the stats, all we really care about is cooldown reduction. I happen to have a pair that had anomaly power and skill life leech. Cool, that's great. The anomaly power will buff your impale, but since it's such a small part of your damage, we don't really care about it, and you don't need it to have that. What we do care about is Bloody Boost. So, this boosts your damage against enemies afflicted with bleed by another 15%. That kind of completes your Unholy Trinity. You get 50 plus 25, that's 75, 85, 90% extra damage to bleeding. That's huge. And then White Horizon is the other mod that's mandatory. It's going to increase the radius of endless mass by 25% and also removes absorbent skin from enemy creatures. So that's going to help you kill them faster. So again, as you notice here, this is absolutely min-max. We're just doing everything to gather up enemies as easily as possible, combining every single buff that is not directly related to firepower or anomaly power when it comes to upping your DPS, and then utilizing these guns. So that's basically the setup. Now let me show you quickly the skill rotation in battle, and then I'll show you the full run through. Alright, so I'm going to show you what this looks like at the very beginning of Frontline as a very quick example. So all you're going to do is you set this up as you run towards enemies, get your golem up, bring everything together with endless mass, and then basically you're just doing this. And everything dies. Very simple. Just like that. And you can just rinse and repeat that. You probably saw my golem buff go up like crazy, and the endless mass comes up really, really quick, and you can kind of rinse and repeat. You saw again, those got all pulled together, and now just all dead again. So there you go, nice and easy, boys and girls. Enjoy. Alright guys, now that you know how to utilize this rotation, let me show you a CT15 clear of this so you can see this in full action. And hopefully you guys enjoy, and I'll see you guys at the end of the video. We will also see the damage breakdown right after the run to see how much each source of damage does. Alright guys, enjoy. Alright guys, so I really hope you enjoyed this build. It was a lot of fun to kind of try and optimize this and make this work. I'm actually shocked and amazed how well this build works. I hope you guys have as much fun with it as I have had with it in the last couple of weeks streaming and showing this off. And as always, remember, if you do like this content, want to see more of it, you can help out by liking, by subscribing, dropping comments, and smashing that notification bell as always. Come and check me out on stream. I'm still streaming Outriders. I know it's not as busy and popular right now, but I'm trying to stream that a couple times a week. And also, go check out my other content. I am all about looter shooters, co-op shooters, and RPGs. So if you like in-depth guides, that's kind of what I do. And I hope you like my other content as well. Alright guys, till the next video, you guys have a good one.